Hey everybody, happy Thursday night. Wes Seiler in the house with Mr. Shawn Burke. How are you, Shawn?
I'm doing great, Wes.
Thanks for being here, brother. Yeah.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, looks like Tom's already jumped in. We've got a few others that have jumped in. Let me know if you hear me okay, but very excited to be doing this show. I actually didn't think we were going to be doing a show tonight when I was looking at the weather a few days ago, man. I was pretty nervous about what was going to happen. I know a lot of people are fearful of that or scared of what's going on in Tallahassee. Here, man, it's been relatively calm, but we know what's going on. But I'm happy to be doing this show. Like Tom said, good evening and stay safe out there. I want to wish that to everybody. But we are so excited to be doing this and talking to you guys, and very excited to have you in the house kind of explaining some of this stuff to us. If you guys don't know, if you haven't seen the post that I put out, Shawn has an incredible amount of experience. I think he said 33 years, right?
Yes.
Doing between the military and the contracting world and all that, working in the weather industry, meteorology, predicting, forecasting, all of that type of stuff. So no better person, man. And our, resident expert right here, in Midway, Gulf Breeze, and Navarre on all this stuff. I love reading your posts and all that about what's going on. I mean, that's where I get my news from.
Well, so. I'm no Jim Cantori.
Yeah, you're Jim Cantori for us, all man.
Right. Good deal.
Yeah, I always look at your posts and stuff like that to get educated. And so when I was thinking, what are we going to do for a show this weekend with this going on? Man, I'm so glad you made time for us. Yeah. So thank you for doing that. Looks like we've got our first 10, 12 people that have jumped in on the show.
All right.
So let me know. Looks like Chuck is on here. Tom is on here. This is a live show, Shawn, that we get to do every Thursday night. And the people that are commenting that's the most fun part of it. It's because they get to ask questions. They get to let us know their thoughts on what's going on, and I get to bring that up, and then we get to have that discussion live.
All right.
And then, of course, it's recorded, so you may be watching this a few days late. You can always send us your comments, your thoughts, your questions, and we'll get to those every show that we can. We're able to do this, buddy, because of several businesses that are helping us out, that have donated to the cause to make this possible. So we've got a couple lights and a decent camera here that we're using. That's because of folks like the Panhandle Shop.
Okay.
So my good friends Tom and Helene Tuttle, amazing folks who work a small business out of their home called the Panhandle Shop, and they do these gorgeous, beautiful wooden flags.
I've seen these.
Have you seen these?
I've
Okay.
Seen these. They're absolutely gorgeous, beautiful.
I pretty much carry a bunch of them around with me at this point, because they're great for like props and stuff at different events. They're great to give to folks. Especially in the military, you got your going aways, your coming backs, you got, your anniversaries, Father's Day, Christmas, all that kind of stuff. And the best part of what Tom and Helen do is that they will customize them for you. So you just let them know what size are you looking for, what shape. They'll put in a little Air Force thing for you if you ask for it, like
Nice.
they did for me. I've seen them do this with the Marine Corps, the Army. They'll do, the dark version of the flag if you want. You let them know. But their email is right there, the Panhandle Shop. Let them know if you've got something big. Obviously, we got a bunch of holidays coming in just a few months. So great folks to talk to and huge supporters of the show. And I know Tom's watching live, so it's good to see you. Looks like Mia's on. Awesome. She says Finn and Mia are watching from Orlando. So praying to God that they're safe out there.
Yeah.
But I think they're kind of on the other side.
They are.
And we're going to talk about that for sure. But glad to hear from you guys. Glad you guys still have power and internet and all that stuff. All right, a couple other sponsors, and then we'll get started. But I always love to mention Stripes and Andy D's, two of the best restaurants in the bar. I know you've been to these places before. Robert Reyes, Andy DeMartin, just wholesome, hardworking individuals who really just dedicate their lives to providing a place where people can go and have a sense of community. They do a lot of fun events there every week. So take a look at their Facebook pages. But
locally owned, family operated.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
I've had both of them on this show before, and they talk very similar in their approach.
Mm-hmm.
They're always thinking, how can I show my love to the community, to Navarre? What can I do to create a place that people are going to feel comfortable in? And I don't know how well you know Andy, but he's got Italian heritage and all that stuff. He's got a passion for Italian food, but he's like, listen.
No wonder you can cook so well.
I know, right? But one of the things he's done with the restaurant is turned it into what Navarre wants, Mm-hmm. So he's doing his pizza and all that kind of stuff out the back, but he's also providing all kinds of, cuisine that people in Navarre really want. Yes. So the same thing with Robert. He's turned into the culture of this place and very successful as a role for both of those guys. So
For the
appreciate
people,
that.
by the people.
That's right.
The way we like it.
And then I love, this is really just a passion project from a lot of us that are involved in the show. Carmen Reynolds is a very good friend of mine. She's a retired lieutenant colonel. And she took this on, just a personal project for her. And I was telling you a little bit about it before we went live. But the Veterans Treatment Court is up and running. And if you've been following the show for a few months, you know that this is something that we believe in wholeheartedly. It is giving specific treatment and a rehabilitation process to veterans who find themselves in a tough spot with the law. And so they get to a place where they're serving time, and we say, okay, they're going to serve their time. What are they going to do once they're released? Are they just going to go back to whatever happened, or are we going to give them some type of specific treatment, probably based upon circumstances that they encountered in the military? For a lot of them is what we're finding. A lot of folks have service-related conditions. This contributes to why they find themselves in a tough spot outside the law. And so what can we do as a society to help them, especially as Navarre, get back on their feet, get them a job, get them back? Because we know at one point in time they were serving their country, right?
Absolutely.
And so we want to get them back to that place where they're full-bodied, able, capable of contributing to society. What they need for this, they need mentors. So if you've served in the military, you have a passion for people who have, take a look at the Veterans Treatment Court. You can contact Carmen with the email address below, Veterans Treatment Court, the number 4, src@gmail.com, or just get in touch with us at the show. We can direct you towards her. But they're looking for mentors for these guys. They're looking for job opportunities for them. We've got several people going through the program now, and that's what's so exciting. Is it is up in, it's been blessed off by the senator. It's been blessed off by the state rep. Now Governor DeSantis as well has given his approval for it. So now we're up and running. And this really fills a gap, because Okaloosa was doing it, Escambia was doing it, Santa Rosa was not, and now we are. So if you want to be part of the initial folks that are making this work, feel free to contact us, let us know. Great thing, man.
Sounds
So
awesome.
Yep, so there's sponsors behind us. I always want to talk about events as well. We just had this, man, so I got to participate in Freedom Quest out in Pensacola. We had Dave Brave USA out there, and amazing performer. He's done, performances in front of 40, 50,000 people before. He was out there. We got invited. We were talking constitutional law. We were talking principles of our country, and he kicked it off, and then we kind of went through the different amendments that are part, of our founding documents, and just a blast. A lot of fun with Dave, a lot of fun getting a chance to speak, and a lot of great people that were behind that. So they're going to do that every year. So that's a really fun event that we participated in. Another one that I'm interested in is we're keeping a close eye on Milton. They've got city council races coming up, and really what's going on in Milton, I don't know if you followed this, Shawn, but there's a big wastewater treatment plant design that they're trying to make happen, and it's very controversial in the city of Milton. Where's it going to happen? Is it going to be on the river? We're not sure, and they go back and forth. And so really the city council elections are going to be talking about that and the future of that community. Well, who knows?
It sounds like something really important.
It really is. We've had several people on the show talking about Save Blackwater River, the dangers that could be posed by that plant if it's put in the wrong spot, and they go back and forth on the science and all that stuff. So something to get informed in, because that water is used for us. A lot of our drinking water comes from up north, and so if there were any damage to the aquifers and things like that, it would affect us. So it's not just a Milton issue. Okay. So it's definitely something to be informed in that we're following. But I'll tell you, man, the reason we get to do this, Shawn, the reason we get to do this show is because of the people in this area, specifically Navarre. That's what we love to focus on. Some of these guys.
Yeah,
all right.
I know Kevin Lucas right there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I remember you were having breakfast with him the other day.
He's an awesome dude.
I mean, that's the thing, man. I started doing this about 6 months ago, and I said, you know what? I just want to feature the people in my local area, because I've known you for years now, right? Known you and your family. I meet people that are just incredible all over this area, but a lot of times you wouldn't know, right? Like, if you don't happen to grab Navarre Press or something like that, you may not know that we got people in the NFL. We've had people that were in the Olympics on the soccer team. We've had people on national television shows and things like that. We've got war heroes. You may not know all the details about these folks if we don't get a specific place to stop and talk about them. And so that's what this is. That's what, people thought, oh, what's this going to do a show, and all he's going to talk about is incorporation. It's like, no, we're talking about something much more important than that, which is the people of this community. So Robert Reyes is one. That's him. We had him on talking about what he did in the service, which is awesome. Michael Carter, that's in the top left. We've got NFL players, people that went to Navarre High School that are now playing on Sundays, making a big difference. The war heroes, Rick Landreth, he was in Black Hawk Down, the actual version, that they portrayed in the film. And then, Kevin Lucas, business entrepreneurs, medical, in his case, entrepreneur, but people all over, and just incredible expertise in a variety of fashions. And that's why I'm excited to have you on, because I've never had someone who specialized in weather before.
That's a hard act to follow.
Oh, dude, you can do it, because
come on.
Who else could, is going to be qualified to talk about what is currently affecting the entire state in some way, shape, or form, but especially just east of us.
Yes.
I mean, my heart breaks for what they must be experiencing in Tallahassee right now as we speak, as it's making landfall,
Yep.
Just absolutely, yeah.
The third one in that area within the last, 13 months?
Yeah,
So.
I mean, just absolutely, I mean, it takes your breath away looking at some of these photos and what's coming, and of course, just kind of like the anticipation, is this, what's going to happen? Is this going to be hitting us? Is it going to be hitting the Big Bend part of Florida? Is it going to be hitting Tampa? I mean, folks don't know, so we all kind of have to wait with bated breath. Where's this going to hit? And then what do you do about it? And so I spent a lot of time working this week with my teams and my day job, over at the base, getting folks ready. Are we going to evacuate? Are we not? What can you do? Board up your home. But then for us, at least right now, and probably for the foreseeable future, it's fairly calm. But then you see what's going on just next to us, and trying to understand that, and then what can we do about it is going to be a big question to help folks out. So
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about all that, man, and I can't wait to hear your perspective and kind of get an understanding of how these models work and how this stuff is predicted. But I do want to interview you and get some of the details of your life, and thankfully you provided some incredible photos, which I can't wait to go through. Because I didn't know all this stuff. I knew you had CERN, like we've talked about it,
Yes.
but the level of detail we're about to get into, I can't wait. So I always ask for the oldest photo that a person is willing to give up. I've had some in black and white, so you got colors, so that's good.
Well, this it's funny because this photo here, I just finished basic training.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready to go to Chanute Air Force Base for training. Chanute is now closed. It's in Rantoul, Illinois.
I've never heard of that. Yeah.
Rantoul, Illinois.
Okay.
South of Champaign-Urbana. But I'm sitting in the passenger terminal over at Eglin Air Force Base because I was catching a hop. I came home on leave.
Okay.
And I was catching a military airlift hop to go up to Illinois.
Got it.
And guess who I got to ride with? A slick sleeve Airman Basic, brand new in the Air Force.
Nice.
I flew with the 4-star general,
who
was chief of staff of the Air Force at the time.
Holy
General
smokes!
Ryan.
Wow.
And it was me and General Ryan on a plane. We just had a conversation the whole flight. It was kind of cool.
Well, I mean, you wear the uniform well, at least from what I can tell. If I was in an inspection, I think you're fine. So, customs courtesies, all that stuff, checked out, right?
It was pretty cool though. But from the top to the bottom, I mean, how
Well, honestly, having been in for a while, that's also a good experience for him. A lot of these guys at the top, they don't always get to see, new recruits and things like that going through the experience. So, the entire, range of the Air Force captured on one flight. That's awesome.
Pretty interesting.
Very cool. So, we're going to get into some of that family legacy and stuff, but my question for you is, as you got into the Air Force, how did you pick your job specifically? How did you land on, weather, meteorology, all of that stuff?
Well, I joined right out of high school in 1989. I graduated just up the road here at Gulf Breeze High School.
Okay.
I grew up in Fort Walton Beach.
Yeah.
And my dad took a job in Pensacola, so my junior year we jumped over here to Gulf Breeze, and then I went and saw my recruiter.
Yeah.
And June of '89, I graduated high school. I saw the recruiter the next day.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, I was on a plane to Lackland Air Force Base.
Wow.
In January 1990. And like I said, I took the ASVAB. I don't think I scored that great, but they needed a lot of weather guys at the time. So the Air Force picked
what was in demand. Oh, it picked it for you. Okay. Yeah,
and,
so the ASVAB that's the test that everybody takes. It kind of tells you your aptitude, what jobs you can do, and things like that. So weather came up for you. So that's what they needed. That's pretty cool. But it became a passion, I can tell. I mean, talking about your service, I think, what are these, 20 years apart? Maybe?
25,
whatever.
1990, and then
clearly
2015.
A distinguished career in your profession. Because folks may know in the Air Force, if you work hard enough, you can switch out and possibly do a different job. But for you, I think it kind of stuck, right? Like,
Yes.
so tell me about that. How did you, get into the career field, and what about it kind of captivated you for, that period of time?
Yeah, well, I was always fascinated by weather growing up here in Florida. I grew up seeing hurricanes. We
Right.
rode out Hurricane Frederick, Hurricane Elena back when I was younger. I remember those two very well. And then, I just had a passion for it. I was excited about it. So the more I learned about it, the more I got excited about it, and I made it a career.
It's such a mystery, right? And that's why I'm excited, to be able to talk to you about this stuff, because those of us on the outside, like, you're just kind of like watching the TV, trying to follow, and anybody can see a map, but can you actually make sense of what it's telling you? Where did it come from? And then, of course, reliability.
Yes.
At what point is it an estimate versus more of a certainty? You see some things that don't pan out the way that they thought they would. I mean, just talking about Helene, they didn't know until recently exactly what part it was going to hit. And then stuff changes seemingly, to degrees in the last minute. So trying to understand some of that science is, it's just kind of beyond a lot of us.
Well, I know as well as I do is whenever you go through training in the Air Force, it's like a fire hose.
Right. Oh yeah.
And when they sent me to technical school, the Community College of the Air Force, trained me in meteorology, and in about 7 months they jammed 2 years worth of college.
Everything they know.
Everything they know.
Yeah.
And it's not about different models and where they derive from and everything. It is specifically geared towards operations. How do we support operations? How is weather going to impact the mission?
Right.
And that I think is why Air Force meteorologists I think are the top. I think they're some of the best. And I've been very privileged to work with some incredible guys who have mentored me, who have taught me, and even just a couple of years ago, some of the guys over at AFSOC, over at Hurlburt, the special operations guys, just the amount and the wealth of knowledge that they have has just developed.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear some of your stories on this stuff, because you sent me some photos on this. So kind of break it down for some folks. Your experience during your time, both enlisted and as an officer. Well, what's going on? We'll start with the top left.
Okay, yeah. The interesting thing about Air Force weather is we don't always go to Air Force bases. The Army does not have a weather MOS or job career field.
Got it.
So ever since the Army Air Corps split and became a separate Air Force, weather has supported Army operations. So we have a large number of Air Force weather guys who deploy with the Army. They support the Army, and that's what I did most of my career, is doing Army support for Army Aviation, Black Hawks, the Chinooks, the Kiowa Warrior, OH-58 Deltas. Some of my best friends that I have are all Army pilots.
Right.
And the most interesting thing about supporting the Army is Air Force pilots, they usually punch through the clouds and fly above the weather. Yeah. The Army guys, they operate in the weather.
Yeah, from the lower altitude.
When it's raining and it's windy and you get the turbulence and everything else associated with that. So we had a really good working relationship with the Army pilots and the Army in general. The bottom picture there was a few years before that. I was actually in Saudi Arabia doing Operation Southern Watch and deployed over there. It was my first deployment. And just prior to the Iraqi war.
Got it. Yeah, amazing, man. And then I got some other photos here. So is this also in Saudi?
That was in Saudi Arabia, Prince Sultan Air Base, Saudi Arabia. After the bombing of the towers, they moved the base a little bit farther out and had more of a security. But this was I'm setting up one of the antennas that we retrieve weather data from, some of our weather charts, the satellite imagery, and things like that. They call it a small tactical terminal, but the funny thing is it wasn't small and it wasn't very tactical.
Right.
But that's the name that they gave it.
Yeah, it's just kind of out there.
So it's stuck. So that's me setting it up on top of the platform there.
And so as they're trying to do specific operations, they're relying on you. Is this the right time to do it? Do we need to push it, another day? And so they're trying to give you what you need to give the most accurate assessment possible, right?
Yes.
In an area where, we may not have a lot of other information.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while I was there in Saudi Arabia and Iraq, for that matter, it's a desert. So they say, how hard can weather be, right?
I was going to show you. You sent me a picture right here.
There you go. There you go. So I remember this was actually in Tikrit, Iraq, a few years after those other pictures. But this is when I went back over, and I was working with 25th Combat Aviation Brigade and 3rd Infantry Division, and they had all of these dignitaries that were coming because they were doing a change out.
Yeah.
And this is the day that they chose that they wanted to fly all of these dignitaries to our base, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So they had to figure out another route. So they ended up doing a convoy instead of flying a lot of these dignitaries to this change out.
Now, was this something you saw
command.
coming, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were able to kind of.
Well,
give him a heads
I
up.
was telling him like 5 days before, I told the Combat Aviation Brigade commander, I said, sir, this is not going to be a good day. This is actually the worst day to fly of your whole deployment because we're going to get this massive dust storm, and it's going to take 5 to 6 days before it settles out.
I mean, that really is, that is it, is everything turns towards weather when you see something big coming, you know, whether it's a hurricane or in this case, like a sandstorm.
I remember specifically because
suddenly, like, the entire room is focused on you, and
they want me to change it.
Right.
And I remember I had to tell the colonel, I said, sir, I'm in sales, not production. So, we had to work with it.
But it doesn't always stop operations, right? I think you told me this story before about doing some more, weather analysis, but stateside, right?
Yes.
So what was the story behind this one?
Well, I was a contractor at this point, working for AFSOC over at Hurlburt.
Yeah.
And this is a great friend of mine, Lieutenant Colonel Shawn Cross. You might have seen him on the Weather Channel. He's one of the Hurricane Hunter aircrew, and he's been flying with them for about 30 years. And this is just hours before he stepped into the aircraft to go fly through Hurricane Michael, their last flight before it made landfall. And as many of you know, Hurricane Michael is one of the strongest storms, right up there with Andrew.
Right.
Cat 5 as it made landfall in Panama City. So
he's flying into this thing?
He flew right into it. And the crazy thing, as they're taking all these measurements, they're, as the hurricane hunters, they're up at 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
But it's still really bumpy.
Yeah.
All the weather, most of the weather is down at the surface.
They can see it, right? Yeah.
But they fly through it. They take measurements of pressure, wind, and they take multiple passes through these storms. And they've been flying, this storm right now.
I would imagine so, yeah. Is that information that's delivered back to predict its path? Or
It is.
What are they doing with that? Okay.
Well, prior to the storm developing, we've got computer models.
Okay.
And a lot of people say, oh man, these things are all over the place. So you got the cone going from, Texas to Tampa, Florida. Yeah. And you can't rely on that.
Yeah.
But once these guys start flying through the storm and collecting real data to plug into these computer models at the National Hurricane Center, that track goes from a wide swath down to a very fine swath.
Okay.
So once they get that eye, or not necessarily an eye, but that center of circulation, it's called a fix.
Right.
They get that fix, and then they can plug that in, and from that point forward, that's how they can track it.
You see, that makes so much more sense. I've heard that on the Weather Channel a few times. It's like once it gets localized in the center, we'll be able to predict its path better.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would that happen? But it makes sense if they've got instruments that can actually see it. Yeah.
And one of the other struggles that they have, especially with this last storm as it was developing, I brought a little visual aid here. So in tropical storms, they typically will develop vertically. This is the surface, this is 30,000 feet, so it's going to develop vertically. And the mid-latitudes, like north of Florida, they tilt.
Okay.
But a lot of times when these tropical storms are developing, you'll have the surface low way over here, and the upper level low is maybe 200 miles back this way. So they might get a fix here, but the model's picking up on the fix over here, so they're kind of all over the place.
I see.
And that's also where they get some of the model data that's kind of
the discrepancies,
a little bit funky.
Yep.
So once that storm develops a little bit and they get a little more of a vertical alignment, they can get that fix and say, okay, from this point forward, boom, and then
I
their
see.
margin of error is a lot less.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah, because we don't always see that. We just kind of see the graphs and like, run for your lives, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't understand the process of how it's getting more defined. So the more it goes on, the more clear it is, not just from the sense of progression, but from the sense of your instruments being
Yes.
able to capture it.
Yes.
Really interesting stuff, man.
And one other story comes to mind
Yeah,
here.
please.
When Shawn Cross and I, after he flew this storm, he came back and he drove over here with a trailer, and then we went to Walmart and we loaded the trailer with water, cleaning
Yeah.
supplies, food, just stuff, jam-packed this trailer full. And we got about 5 other people, Shawn, his wife, his son, and some
Yeah.
other friends. We all got together and we went over to Southport,
Okay.
in the north part of Panama City there. Absolutely devastated by the storm. We were the
Yeah.
first ones they'd seen in 3 days since the storm hit.
Yeah. Wow.
Everybody was going into Panama City, but Shawn said, "Man, these people need help.
Right.
They got trailers. They probably don't. I don't know if they got insurance on their houses, their cars, and they're
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
It was really, really
I
rough.
remember, with Hurricane Michael, and I got some photos that we'll get to as well on that. Going in, I think it was probably whenever they allowed civilians in, right? It was like 10 days or something
Yeah.
like that. And I mean, just down power lines,
Mhm.
signs threatening looters, and I mean, just people who had lost everything.
Mhm.
It was just, it
Yeah.
was absolute carnage, and just not what you expect to see in an American town. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I've seen disaster areas and tornadoes and things like that, but I've never seen just wreckage throughout an entire city before.
Yeah, like a war zone.
Exactly. Yeah, it was like that. It was
I
like
remember
like
coming
an
back
active
to-
war zone. In some
Coming
ways.
back to Hurricane Katrina on the Mississippi Gulf
Yeah.
Coast after Katrina went through there. I mean, a lot of my family lived there at that time as well. So
Yeah.
just they can be devastating.
Yeah, it's just and that's the thing about whether people forget about it, they don't think about it, and all of a sudden, it's everything. Society hinges upon it. So you mentioned family, and I wanted to talk about that too because you had this distinguished career, specialist in your trade, but kind of built on a legacy from your father and his father going back several generations, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was a 3rd-generation airman. My grandfather, pictured here, and my
Yeah.
grandmother, when he joined the Army Air Corps and went off to North Africa
Really cool.
and served in North Africa, and then later he got promoted rather quickly throughout the war to Master Sergeant, which was the highest
Yeah.
you could go as the enlisted force back then.
Right.
And he was the chief of intelligence for General Doolittle.
Yeah, from the
And-
Doolittle raid. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
so,
cool.
I'm very proud of my Air Force
Yeah,
heritage. My
great
father, not pictured here. I don't know
Yeah.
if he had
I've got you. Yeah, I don't know if I have him.
Yeah, my dad was an air traffic controller
Yeah.
and a single parent for most of
Wow.
his career.
Got it.
And this stretch of road right outside the
Yeah.
building here, Highway 98,
Yeah,
every weekend he'd get off work
Uh-huh.
either at Eglin or Hurlburt,
yeah.
and we would blast over to Pensacola because my grandmother lived over there. So
Got it.
we drove this thing
All the time.
all the
Way
time,
back in
back
the
and
day.
forth, when there was nothing but trees.
I must say, a
out
lot less traffic back then. But yeah, I mean, now you got your own family, your own kids. You started raising them while you were still in, right?
Yes.
Like those are BDUs, right?
Yeah,
I remember those.
That would have been probably about 97 when my son was born.
Yeah.
We were in Cheyenne, Wyoming at that time.
Yeah.
And then my wife Mia and I now. And my
Yeah.
daughter Ayla, you can see her off to the edge there too.
Great picture.
And,
yeah,
And
following
then
the
the
family
kids
tradition.
grew up.
So now 4th generation. Yeah, amazing.
So
right?
my son Liam as a crew chief.
That's so cool.
And he's up in North Carolina. My son-in-law Tommy was a crew chief as well.
Yeah.
And they recently came back from Germany, and now he's a civilian.
Yeah.
That's my daughter Ayla and my son Finley, who's watching the podcast with
Yeah.
Mia down in Orlando right now. But
Amazing.
he's a little bigger than that now.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the photos and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I said, I can't think of anybody better. Like a specialist with decades of experience. Very indicative of our community in such a military-friendly town. But it's exactly what I was talking about when we talk about the heroes of this area, people who are amazing at what they do. So yeah, help us make sense of this. So we've mentioned Michael. We've talked about kind of some of the general theory and stuff. But what are we looking at with Helene? Because people are seeing the weather. They're seeing graphs like this. I mean,
Yes.
everybody's sharing them like crazy, And I had somebody in my office kind of say like, I became a weather person overnight because I had to, because we didn't have anybody else, right? Like,
Yes.
so everybody's kind of amateuring it. But I want to get into your mind of what did you see with this storm and how it developed, and what stuck out to you?
Well, one thing that I can't stand, and most everybody that knows me knows that I can't stand hype. I like to stick to the facts, and that's probably my military training. I don't like to hype things up, so I don't fit in very well in the media. I did do some moonlighting in Cheyenne, Wyoming for CBS Channel 5,
Nice.
and that lasted just a couple of weeks. So I'd much rather talk to generals than to a camera.
Yep.
But one of the things, like I said, I stick to the facts. There are a lot of people out there that have theories and ideas of what it may or may not do, and whether or not the media's got their own motive to fear and anxiety.
Sure.
I don't like to play that. These are dangerous storms. They do cause death and destruction. But I want to focus our attention, where is that going to occur, rather than get the entire Gulf
Just
Coast
widespread
from
chaos.
Texas to New York
Right.
worked up over this.
Right.
Who is it going to impact, and how is it going to impact them?
Yeah.
So I saw some indications about a week ago.
Okay.
Again, when you're looking at stuff 7 to 10 days out, it just gives you a hint. Say, hey, keep an eye on this. It could develop into something. Right. And these forecast models, like we talked about before, they're going to be all over the place. You're going to say, oh, we're going to Texas with this storm, we're going to Miami with this storm, and everything in between. But as the storm starts to develop and get a center, but more importantly, when we start collecting data with the hurricane hunters flying through the storm, that's when we can start to focus in on, okay, where's this going to go and how strong is it going to get?
And how quickly? I know you mentioned it a little bit, but how quickly does that happen? Like, at what point in the process? Because you're showing this is a more current, map. At what point do you think they had that information?
Well, once it starts to get a rotation.
Okay.
Within the storm, they try to, whenever there's a large wave
Yep.
of tropical weather coming across, say into the Caribbean, they keep an eye on it, but it's basically just your tropical easterlies going from east to west. And then once they start seeing some rotation in that, they'll say, hey, we need to get a sortie to go out there, and we'll do a low-level invest.
Yeah.
And we're going to try and see if we can pinpoint where that rotation is and how strong it is. And then once they start getting that low-level invest, then they will start doing the drop sondes throughout the entire storm and collecting that data.
Yeah.
So they can
So at this
dial
point-
those models in.
At this point, they've got it, right? Like, we're seeing it make
absolutely.
landfall. You can see that red line on your weather
Oh,
app.
they had it down there south of Cuba.
Did they?
Monday, I believe, was the first day they flew it.
Okay. Oh,
So
really?
Monday.
Okay.
So if you noticed, and I went back and looked, because everybody's saying, hey, it's going left, it's going right, it's doing, and I don't know who they're watching, or local media or what, but I went back and I'm looking at all the tracks, and it had everything right at or just east of Apalachicola for the last 4 days.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well.
And and that's right where it's going tonight.
But then you see models like this. It's like the entire state is full. Like, like what's going to happen? But this is communicating something a little bit different.
This is something completely different. This is basically the wind field.
Yeah.
It kind of shows you this is a very large, very broad storm. I was looking at some of the winds throughout Florida. While down in South Florida, they didn't have a lot of rain going through. I think right along the coast, Sarasota, Tampa, Naples, and they had a couple of showers even over in Orlando, but they were pretty short-lived.
Right.
But the winds have been picking up, and we're seeing 50, 60 mile an hour on the east coast of Florida.
Right.
From Miami all the way up towards Jacksonville
Right.
with this storm. And that is, more than 200 miles from the
It's
storm
massive.
center. That's a huge wind field. And if you look, most of that is going to be east of that storm center, because that's where a lot of that push is coming from the south going up to towards the north. But this is going to track up through Georgia, so almost the entire state of Georgia is going to continue to see at least tropical storm winds through the next 48 hours.
Yes. And just the massive scope of this thing, I think, is what's kind of shocking people.
Yeah.
This right here talks about storm surge.
Yes, and this is just updated as well. So you can see that area that highlighted there in purple. That's kind of ground zero for the storm surge. We're looking at 10 to 15, and it says even upwards to 20 feet in some locations there. That it's just going to be a massive storm surge. All that water for the last 48, 72 hours now, since it got past Cuba, has just been pushing towards the north, and it's all going to be concentrated on that area later on tonight.
Right.
Tides are already coming up. We're not only with the storm surge, but we're going to look at high tide on top of that, and that's why that forecast was bumped up to say upwards of 20 feet in some of the big bend areas.
Right.
But you can see down towards Tampa even a little bit higher, what's that, 10 to 12 feet,
right.
10 to 15 feet down towards Tampa. And I noticed that the causeway was underwater. I saw some video earlier today. They were just getting pounded and underwater. But then all the way down the east coast towards the Keys.
Yeah, that's just insane. Yeah,
just that whole eastern side of the storm is just where all that energy is moving towards. And all that water, once it gets moving, that's what they call fetch. You got a lot of wind over a large area over a long period of time, 3 days.
Right.
And that water, even if the storm decreases in intensity, like Hurricane Katrina did, down to a 3, that water is still moving.
Right.
It's not going to stop moving.
Yeah, it's a cumulative effect of just over a long period of time.
And on the west side, if you look over towards Panama City and the Panhandle area, you can see it's much less because the winds are out of the north, and that water is going to be drawn away from the coastline.
Got it. Yeah. And this one right here?
This is radar from a couple hours ago, and with that, I've also got the lines showing the strength of the storm, and the winds are rotating around that storm in a counterclockwise motion. But the interesting thing is the entire peninsula of Florida, there's not a lot of rain going on. Most of it is...
Yeah, we're not experiencing it here at all.
Yeah, it's concentrated towards the center, but look directly north of the center of that. It's been dumping over in Panama City all day. They've got almost 4 inches of rain today.
Have they? Okay.
And we've got nothing.
Right.
Hardly at all here in the Panhandle. Up towards Georgia and North Carolina, they've seen 4 to 5 inches. Up in North Carolina, just south of Asheville, I saw just horrendous flooding.
Yeah.
But this is two systems combined. You had the cold front that was coming out of the northwest, and then you've got Hurricane Helene that's basically merging with that cold front, and that's where all that moisture is meeting in the middle. And then, of course, it's compounded with some of the terrain up in the Appalachians. So.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just what's so jarring about, and just eerie about, being on the Panhandle, especially where we are, because we're having next to no effects, and yet we're 2 hours east, just like you said, huge storm surge, winds, and everything else, and then a little further after that to Tallahassee.
Yes.
And it's just seems like absolute chaos.
Yes.
Going on, and
the good news with Tallahassee, if there is any good news to take out of this, is Tallahassee's on a higher ground, so they're not going to see storm surge in Tallahassee. That's going to be isolated a little further south along the coast, some of those low-lying areas. But Tallahassee is going to get some torrential rainfall. Sure. We're looking at 10 to 12 inches overnight tonight through tomorrow. Yeah. So there's going to be some flooding in Tallahassee as well. And hopefully their emergency management system has got that mitigated to where it's not going to be compounded.
That's a big part of this, and this kind of shows you the eye of the storm that you talked about. And once that spin starts to happen, you predict it. I mean, that I guess is that a huge part of weather, is informing the emergency management and working with them closely? I mean, if we were having this discussion and we were in Tallahassee, a couple of days ago, what would you be telling them? Just evac as many people as possible.
Well, you sound the alarm, but you want to do it calmly.
Right.
I mean, there's a balance. You want to say, hey, we've got a very significant situation, but you don't want to, cause mass hysteria.
Right.
Where everybody goes and buys all the bread and toilet paper and milk, and you got nothing. And but thankfully they seem to have managed it a little bit better. I noticed that even around here in the Panhandle, as close as we are, it seems to be relatively calm. You didn't have a big rush for the gas pumps and so. But if I were in Tallahassee, basically just stressing the importance of having a plan, being prepared for it, and briefing your emergency management crews and how are we going to get the linemen in here, how are we going to get emergency vehicles in here. And, a lot of that is already in place. They've got an emergency management plan. But whenever things like this happen, as it is happening now, they put that plan into action.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, Shawn. I also think about kind of like the long-term plan, because everybody here is grateful that we did get affected. Our heart goes out to the people that were. There's going to be a period of time where this thing is something like this is a little further west, and it is coming.
Yeah.
And I had Jerry Cooey on here last week, who's just huge when it comes to infrastructure and sounding the alarm on that. And that's one of my biggest concerns of Santa Rosa County is you don't see a lot of that stormwater mitigation drainage systems, especially in Navarre.
Yes.
Right? Like we don't have a lot of those systems here to be able to handle, because unlike Tallahassee, we're right there. You know what I mean? And where's that water going to go?
Yes.
In huge parts of our community.
Well, many people from this area, it wasn't too long ago, we remember Hurricane Sally.
Yep.
And prior to that, we had Hurricane Ivan.
Yep.
Hurricane Opal. Most of us that are from this area realize that the threat is very real.
Right.
We remember those things. We remember the devastation it happened.
Like we talked about with Michael, so some of the photos from Michael, and there's power lines down.
But we do have a very large new population of new residents that have been moving to Florida recently. Yeah. So this is something that is, as far as educating them and helping them make those decisions.
Because there's a balance there, when you talked about not being hysterical, not creating a panic, all that stuff, staying focused on what is the actual threat here, but then at the same time not forgetting it once it's over, right? Not just kind of say, okay, well, good, we survived that one, there's nothing we need to do. It's like, guys, we need to prepare, because at some point there will be one that's going to hit this area, and we need to take those precautions ahead of time. Because some of that infrastructure is millions of dollars, to be able to prepare for it. Burying power lines, stuff like that, takes months, if not years, to accomplish. So there's a balance between being focused on the threat, but then not letting people get so comfortable that they forget that it's a liability every year.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's part of life. So, well, great, really good stuff. Well, thank you so much for that, Shawn. That was really helpful, going into some of that stuff and learning, exactly how that process happens.
There's going to be a test after.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, so my test is to go into your Facebook, and now I'm going to ask: has the military completed its flight yet? Because that's what I need to know. Is is this data good yet, or is this still speculative? But I really think that's what you've been telling us on a lot of those things. So definitely look up Shawn on social media, because I love the post that that's where I go to every time. I'm like, what is Shawn saying?
Well, and sometimes people will say, hey, this. There's another storm behind this one. I'm already getting text tonight that I guess some forecast model is indicating there's another one that's going to be bullseyed over Pensacola in 12 to 15 days.
Right now,
And there's models that some handle it very well, and some of them over exaggerate everything, especially 10 to 15 days out. You can't trust that.
Right.
So there's always a chance, anytime between June and November, there's always a chance we can have a hurricane right here in Navarre. And
and again, that's not cause for hysteria. It is cause for, hey, let's take, the precautionary measures we can, and then if those, or to the extent they don't work, what are we going to do, when they fail? Like, are we going to evac? How are we going to do that? Where are you going to go? Have a plan, like you said. What do you think comes next? Because, granted, our area looks like it's pretty much spared from all this stuff, but the folks, just east of us.
Yes.
What do you see in terms of disaster relief and all that stuff?
Well,
do you think that those plans are being, formulated?
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I think you need to know what organizations are credible.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of armchair weathermen, I guess you get, or that sit behind their keyboards and
who don't have 33 years of experience in active operations,
or even 15. They just got an interest in it. They're enthusiasts.
Sure.
And they're pushing out all kinds of information, and sometimes that information is not correct.
Yeah.
And so you've got to channel that information. You go to the experts at the National Hurricane Center, the Storm Prediction Center, places like that actually that's their job.
Right. Well, that was kind of the thing with Michael is, there's a lot of folks who wanted to go help when they saw, all the devastation. And it was like, wait a couple weeks until we can actually secure the area, because it wasn't safe, right?
Yes.
Like you got power lines down that are, could be on, could be off, you don't know. You've got all kinds of like dangerous obstacles, that could destroy your car. I mean, people, just, absolutely devastated after what has happened. And it's like, let the professionals go in, secure the area, and then all the churches and everybody else can come and donate their time.
Well, it's tough when you've got friends and family
Yeah.
right in the bullseye, and you can't get a hold of them because all the phone lines are down, the
Right.
towers are down. You can't call them on their cell phone. You
Right.
just rings and rings, and you imagine you go to the worst possible scenario.
Yeah.
And you want to get over there and check on them.
Yeah.
And that was the case with Shawn Cross and I a couple of years ago with Hurricane Michael. We went in there.
Yeah.
We made our way in.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And we didn't get in the way of any of the emergency crews because they were all down in Panama City.
Right.
We were up in Southport.
Right.
And helping some of the folks over there.
Yeah.
So.
But then it's just like that cumulative effort that takes a lot of time. Because I remember with Hurricane Sally's another one that was hit west. We were like building roofs and helping people patch theirs up because they had
Yes.
rain coming in and stuff like
Yes.
that. And that went on for months after
Yeah.
that thing had passed. Right.
Yes.
So I think there's going to be a lot of chances for folks here to help out.
Yes.
Based on what's happening tonight.
There are a lot of great organizations in the local areas. Some of them are sponsored by local churches.
Yeah.
The disaster response groups and things
Yep.
like that you can get involved in, and be able to concentrate your efforts to where they're needed the most. Because we'll get those calls coming in to our emergency management center, and they say, hey, we have a need for this. We have a need for this. We need
Exactly.
chainsaws over here. We need a front end loader, or a
Sure.
bulldozer over here. So we don't just show up on somebody's doorstep and
Right.
they're just fine.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm sure that's something we'll be involved in as it goes ahead. So, well, thank you guys so much for watching the show. Shawn, thank you so much. It was great information. Exactly what I was hoping for. Kind of sets everybody more on a more focused path of what to expect and where the information comes from. But really appreciate you guys that commented and got involved in the live show. We do this every Thursday night. So have a variety of different folks come on the show from different career fields, different passions, different organizations, talking about a whole bunch of different things that you guys care about. So if you've got ideas for that, let me know. Feel free to contact the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can also reach out on preservenavarre.com. Anytime, let us know. Give us feedback on this stuff. So, Shawn, thanks again, man. Appreciate you being here.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Les.
Y'all have a great Thursday night. We'll see you next week.